Welcome to A Guide to Every Deck in EDH. Today we're looking at Oskar Rubbish Reclaimer. So Oskar is a 5 mana Dimir commander, but he costs 1 less to cast for each different mana value among cards in your graveyard, which is pretty easy to achieve. It's like fetch land and then any spells that cost 1 to 2. In addition, he says whenever you discard a non-land card, you may cast it from your graveyard, and this is where we're going to be able to generate a lot of combo and value potential. So any card that would normally be a looting effect, where you draw and discard, is now card positive because we can cast those spells from the graveyard. So obviously this leads to a lot of cantripping and filtering cards, so some highlights here are things like Attune, a 3 mana enchantment that says return it to your hand, draw 3, then choose and discard 4. But again, that doesn't matter because we're discarding with Oskar in play, so we can get to play all of those cards. We're obviously going to want a bunch of cheap stuff as well, because we're going to be able to want to cast all the cheap stuff from our graveyard that we're discarding, since we have to do it right then. So things like Chromatic Star and Sphere and Conjurer's Bauble. We've got a bunch of other cantrips, and we've got cards like Careful Study, Charted Course, Ledger Shredder, Frantic Search, all of these cards that we discard, and then we can cast the thing from our graveyard. Bazaar of Baghdad in here as well, Magus of the Bazaar for the same reason. And then we have cards like Mishra's Bauble and Urza's Bauble, because again, we're going to be discarding a bunch and we want to be able to cast as much of those spells as possible. So we need to not be hindered by a bunch of expensive cards that we can't do. We also have things like Cephalid Coliseum, which would normally be, draw 3, disc 3, but now it's basically draw 6 because we get to cast all the spells. Then we've got just our straight up card draw with things like Breakthrough, draw 4, then choose X in your hand and discard the rest. So for 1 mana, we basically draw 4 cards and then discard the rest of our entire hand. Or, those 4 cards, but it doesn't matter. We get to play them all. Dark Deal and Windfall, basically any wheel effects, doesn't matter. We get to cast all the discarded cards. Same thing with Riddlesmith. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, you can draw and discard. And then we've got Secrets of the Dead. Whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard, draw a card. So this is just another way of getting up on cards. So a lot of card draws you can see here, but it's worth it with our commander. Then we've got a little bit of combo potential. So the main things here are, first of all, Lion's Eye Diamond is basically just a free Black Lotus type card in our deck, because it doesn't matter that we're discarding our hand, we get to cast all of those spells. And the next thing is the combo of Mind Over Matter, Shrieking Drake, and anything that can tap to produce blue. So Mind Over Matter discards a card, and it taps or untaps a creature, artifact, or land. So if we have any land or creature or artifact that can produce a blue mana, and we've got Shrieking Drake, here's what we can do. We tap for a blue. Mind Over Matter, discard the Shrieking Drake, and untap whatever the thing is that we just tapped for a blue mana. Now we've got a blue mana, and Shrieking Drake just went to our graveyard with Oskar in play, so we can cast the Shrieking Drake. So we cast the Shrieking Drake from our graveyard. Its ability triggers, we bounce it back to our hand. Then we Mind Over Matter, discard the Shrieking Drake, untap the blue card again. We do that infinitely over and over and over. And then the main win condition here is just Altar of the Brood. We're just going to use Altar of the Brood to mill out all of our opponents. Then we got a bunch of counter spells. We got a little bit of fast mana. We've got a bunch of lands, and Academy Ruins is in here again for another reason that I'll get to later. But partially this is for, let's say our opponent blows up Altar of the Brood, we can get it back. And we got our protection to make sure that Oskar doesn't get killed or countered, and then some ramp spells, a lot less than usual, but still a lot. Bunch of removal. EE in here mainly because it's a spell that we can cast for 0 when we discard it, so we can just get it for free again. And then some tutors, and then finally an important card, Elixir of Immortality. So you gain 5, and then shuffle this and your graveyard to your deck. So this is basically what happens if we get Altar of the Brood too late, and we, churn through a huge amount of our deck, and now that's all in our graveyard and we don't have enough permanents to actually trigger Altar of the Brood to kill our opponent. Well, no fear. Just use Elixir to shuffle everything back in and then keep going. And then the Altar of the Brood will definitely be able to kill opponents. And Academy Ruins also works here. What happens if we mill over Elixir or gets countered or whatever? We can Academy Ruins this back into our hand and then use it again. There's also a lot of side utility that some of these cards have. So for example, Snuff Out, Deadly Rollick, and Submerge are all free spells that also technically are mana value 4 and 5. So this is just another way of getting a different mana value into the graveyard should you happen to need it. There's, additional cards like Sink into Stupor, which is technically 3 mana, but it's also a land. Anything that happens to have a different mana value, but you can really cast it for cheaper, winds up being better in this deck as a way of making Oskar cheaper. But anyways, with all that said, that is going to do it for Oskar Rubbish Reclaimer in EDH.